described as bitter. For some reason, I believe that people were debating about two different plants, but it sounds like from your comments that you really, it's addressing how the tea is regarded, its use. The other question is the transition from tea from a luxury good that's only available to the highest classes, moving down through culture into mass market, I guess, and how that fits in with the outlier tea bowl where they use the character for bitter, and yet it was written in a kind of a casual idiom, implying that it had been there for a while.
Okay, we cannot. Can you? Is it? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I guess I have to keep my finger on it. We cannot prove that that plant from 600 BC is the same identical plant as Camellia sinensis. But phonologically, if we follow the evolution of the sound, in the very fact that that identical character is used for tea shows that there's a connection. I mean, it's got the grass radical at the top. It has the tu phonophore, and that was the character that was used for the ancient bitter plant. But okay, sinologists identified that ancient bitter plant as various kinds of plants. People like James Legge, for example, and Bernard Reed. But one of the things that's good about this tea bowl is it actually connects that character with tea. I think it actually helps us to understand the evolution of the term, the fact that we have this datable bowl with the wrong character for tea. Okay, it's a difficult question, but I think that's about the best I can do in this kind of circumstance. And as far as the vernacular term, what I tried to say very quickly was that it was in a context of Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, that tea drinking first developed in China, in the main part of China. So the Buddhists were the people who were using that kind of language. In fact, I'm teaching a seminar at Penn this summer, this spring semester, in which I'm focusing on that kind of language, and it's clearly in a Buddhist environment. The Confucians did not like that kind of language. It's too crude. But the Buddhists really thought this was good because it's demotic, it's popular. And the Buddhists were very much oriented to people. Same thing in India. You know, the Buddhists, even in the 20th century, Ambedkar, for example, they were populist revolutionaries. That's about what I want to say right now.
All right. See if I can get there quickly. Try that one.
Yes, about the Chinese tea culture, and I remember when I learned tea, it's called Shen Long, 神龙尝百草，得徒而解之。Tu is the words you're pointing out today on the tea bowl, and this is the earliest we can find the original in the book about the tea, and it is the words not similar like right now we call the tea, and I heard about the reason they changed the tu to cha is because Chinese like writing the words have meaning. People live in the woods and weeds inside between the woods and the weeds. 人生在树和草之间，就是草字头，然后下面一个木， at top is the weeds, at the bottom is a tree, and the people, human, is in the between, in the middle. And another translate is saying, if you drink tea, you can have long life. And 20 is the top, the T words, and then underneath the 88, translate say 20 plus 88 is 108. So if you drink tea, you can live 108 years old. So this is I understanding about Tu and Cha. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't think it's the kind of question that I would want to answer in front of this audience. It's too diffuse. Your question is not very precise. So I'll talk to you later, okay? I don't know how to answer you right now.
This question's for Dr. Jegathesan. When you were, based in the experience you had when you were in Sri Lanka, what was, I guess, what were children's lives and education like? I read they were, plantations now are supposed to provide education for tea plantation workers. Did you see them being formally educated, and at what age did they start working, usually?
Thank you so much for that question. So in the 1970s, and what you did see was that the plantations were required to educate up until the 5th standard. And so you see that plantations do have schools that actually are up until the 5th grade. And so then there are other schools that they can go to. Now that was the standard in the 1970s. Now they go up through high school or through what you consider the advanced levels. They can take their ordinary levels. What you are seeing though is that even though there is the free sort of public education system, there is a sort of hierarchy within that in terms of students who have access to private tutoring. And so the fees for private tutoring are simply unattainable. You can't meet them. And so a number of plantation workers do not have the access to those funds to then educate their children to get the higher marks, which are only sort of attainable through private tutoring. And so unless you kind of make those sacrifices or have additional income, that's why you do see a number of wives and husbands leaving for going to the Middle East to earn additional income. In terms of children and their experiences, a lot of people look at the plantation line room as a space that's not really adequate for education. They're sort of cramped spaces. Oftentimes multiple generations live within sort of the 12 by 7 foot, but now kind of built upon spaces. So it's hard to kind of find places to study and to excel. You're also seeing that the sort of a poorer quality of teachers in the area. A lot of teachers don't want to be placed in the remote areas of the plantations. So it's a combination of socio and economic forces. And so in my larger research, and currently I'm actually looking at child labor practices. It's obviously there are laws in place through the National Protection Child Agency and things like that, but you do see a number of children that still continue to work as housemaids or working in homes of the middle to upper class elites in Colombo and other areas. And they do it, and but the problem is, and as a cultural anthropologist, the contradiction is that it is prestigious, right? And not to say that child labor is prestigious, but I speak to about, every woman of over the age of 50 was a child laborer. And so how do you kind of accommodate that experience and still show yourself dignity to reflect upon your life as you built your life, knowing that, we don't think about our lives in terms of human rights violations, right? We think about our lives as built, not in the legal sense. So it's a complex question, and I'd love to speak with you after, but hopefully that gives you some idea. Go ahead.
All right, this is for Professor Ahmed. I thought this concept of the agroforests is very interesting, and that it seems to be extremely important to have a certain level of diversity, and that this is a very complicated system you're talking about. Is there some consensus, or either among the growers, the tenders, or with your research, what is the right level of diversity? Do people go and do different areas, do it in different ways? Have you reached some conclusions about that?
That's a great question. I wish I could answer that. That's something that's been on my mind also, in what sort of the, I wouldn't say optimal level of diversity, and sort of the consensus among the tea stewards of these agroforests in Sichuan is more diversity the better. And so really managing that diversity in terms of soil organic matter, in terms of the genetic diversity in the land races of the tea itself, and in terms of the structure of the tea garden. And so in addition to tea, Camellia sinensis growing in these agroforests, there's also timber species, medicinal plants, fruit trees, and so really a range of food and medicinal plants that communities are procuring. And so I would say the consensus really is diversification. The more diversity, the better. Thank you.
My question is directed to Dr. Chen. Firstly, all of you, I enjoyed your presentations very much. But Dr. Chen, I was really stimulated by your really very complete, I would like to have studied the slides longer, on Taiwan tea. And I have had the opportunity to travel a lot to Fujian, also to Taipei. But I think it just really kind of got me thinking about the comparison between Fujian tea, oolong tea, and all its types. And when you said 5 types, I thought you were going to say white, red, and this and that of the different kinds. But I want to ask you specifically, but I would love to see that kind of who started which first, and in Wuisan and all that's been in that area too is kind of really interesting in Fujian. We can talk later about that. But I want to know that 6th oolong tea type you had mentioned. I don't think you got back to that in your talk. It was in your pocket. It was your invention of oolong tea, the 6th type.
The little bottle actually was essence. It's one of my good friend has tasted. You can actually smell it when it's cold. It's an extraction out of the baozong tea, the 3rd version of the oolong tea. And the liquor itself, the water is direct extracted from the tea leaf and the tea tree. It's still, right now, is a very much experimental product. It's not on the market yet. And we don't have a lot of it, but we kind of find it's a very intrigued and very pleasant smelling, potentially commodity, but not yet to the public yet because we don't have a lot of quantity to it. But add up to my quest to understand how the Taiwan tea was made, especially the oolong tea, it add up to the context that the fragrant ingredient, it's actually more complex than people perceive, which give us a much higher respect to the ancient tea master who actually created this methodology of creating the aroma for it. And this gives us a better responsibility that if we want to transfer the knowledge that we have today and to the next generation, so we keep improving and bring the joyfulness of the oolong tea to all the mankind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question? Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for all of your presentations. I just wanted to say that I really respect everybody's deep work and dedication to their field of study in tea, and everybody's interest in the different bodily senses of tea. In my 20 years of drinking tea as a daily practice, the most important sense that I've engaged in has been the spirit inside of the tea itself that connects with the spirit inside of myself. And I just want to ask you as a general question to the 4 of you, or possibly Catherine, how you see, or in what way do you see the spiritual aspect of the tea history and tea daily practice and the tea culture. How do you see that being woven into this context of what I call a very mind-engaging approach to today's presentation, which I really appreciate. I don't want to take anything away from that, but to have a holistic approach to the development of a tea culture in this Western society, I think is very important, because that's how tea started in the beginning, was from a spiritual point. So for it to develop in the West without that spiritual side seems to be lacking and seems to take some respect away from it. So I would like to, anybody who would like to comment about that, I feel it's a very important aspect that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
I would love for Matthew London to respond to that question.
Bravo. Oh boy. Okay. Okay. Professor Ahmed is calling on me because I'm writing a book called The Spirit of Tea. So I think, and the questioner is a dear friend of mine. So for me, I think the origin of tea is not as a spiritual drink. It was like everything for humans, either food or medicine or poison, and they realized it wasn't poisonous, and it was both food and medicine. And so it entered into the culture initially as a medicine, and then after some time, it became spiritualized. And I think that that was a transition period away from tea as a medicinal drink to a spiritual beverage. I see tea as a multifaceted diamond, a piece of jade with many, many different patterns in it. And to me, the thing that really makes tea shine so bright is the fact that it does have so many different facets. So on one hand, there would be a facet that is deeply profound and spiritual. On the other, another facet is a scientific facet, or a labor facet, or a linguistic facet, or an olfactory facet. And to me, the beauty of tea, and to kind of bring it back full circle, the thing that really makes the spirit of tea so beautiful is that it has room to encompass all of those things. So I think that again, as humans, we're so interested to go into the fine details of just about everything that we encounter. And I can't think of any plant, actually there is no other plant in the world that's been studied so intensely as tea. And that's a beautiful thing. And there's room for so many different perspectives. So I hope that that's addressed your question in some way.
I see another question. And maybe just, we'll see.
I would like just follow up a little bit. It involves a little bit of self-advertisement, but my name is Midori Makio, and I'm from San Francisco State. I organize an international tea conference, tea culture conference called Ocha Zanmai, immersed in the pleasure of tea. And the next conference's theme is Chanoyu, tea ceremony, and Zen Buddhism. And if you're interested in attending a conference that's going to be held on Sunday, April the 30th, please talk to me during the Shinbokai, the connection time at the restaurant. I was really shocked and delighted to learn from Dr. Ahmed about when you talked about the tea qualities. You mentioned caffeine is bitter, thiamine creates umami or good taste. Catechins are bitter but give sweet aftertaste. And when we engaged in preparing a thick bowl of tea, in a ceremony. We use powder green tea. We pay attention to the temperature of hot water and how we mix the powder with the whisk. And we thought that it's in our technique to make the bowl of tea delicious or bitter, which is a failure, or sweet. And I learned today from you, thank you very much, that some portion at least of the taste of the tea is predetermined by the chemical ratio of these compounds. But interestingly, when we use the same tea powder and the same person prepares a bowl of tea and uses the same water, which is the same temperature, it varies. The taste varies. Something mysterious happens. And if you have ever done any research on what happens in that process of mixing, or how to mix would be the best method of mixing, whipping, or what really determines the final taste of a bowl of thick tea, that would be tremendously appreciated as a practitioner. I want to learn the secret. And if among the distinguished chemists in the audience, if your research is touching upon this issue, please talk to me. And what do you think? Yeah.
Excellent. That's a great question. I just wanted to clarify that today I focused on the chemical aspects of production at the ecological level at the tea garden, but in addition, there's changes in the chemistry, as I pointed out, in terms of the processing and then the storage, the distribution, and then when we bring the tea back to our homes, in the way that we're actually preparing the tea also changes the phytochemistry. And that's not so much, that's more in you're starting with a certain level of chemistry, and then the way you're extracting it influences how much of that chemistry you're actually capturing in your final brew. So, you know, if you're looking at a loose leaf or you're looking at a whisked green tea where the leaf is actually pulverized or ground, you're going to be extracting more of the bitter compounds because the surface, there's more interaction of the water with the leaf surface, and so you're going to be having a more optimal extraction. So there are all of these different steps that influence the flavor, also the level of processing. And so it really depends on the flavor preference. But absolutely there is a role that you are playing in your preparation of tea.
Okay, so I can tell there are lots and lots more questions, which is wonderful. However, I suggest that you ask them at the reception this evening at Seasons that starts at 7. Before you go, I want you to write down in your notebooks and put in your calendars to come back next year, February 22nd and 23rd, for our 3rd annual symposium on the future of tea, issues in sustainability and preservation on this campus. And meanwhile, I want to ask everybody to thank our audience to thank our speakers.